This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's talk about his brother Dory. He becomes the NWA World Champion in 1968, and essentially the Funk Dynasty is born. What do you think of Dory being World Champion? I think he's probably Bruce Pritchard's favorite NWA World Champion.
Well, that's all that matters. Whatever Bruce thinks.
We have that argument all the time because I only ever saw Dory in the later years when Dory had slowed way down. Because, you know, Dory probably wrestled since you and I've been recording this. He's never going to stop. And so I saw him wrestle in the later years and I was like, man, I just don't get it. And of course, you know, Bruce being older than me, he says, you had to be there.
Yeah.
But I'm curious your stance because you and I've never talked about it. What do you think of Dory as the champion?
I loved him because he was so solid. You know, you look for a champion that can work with anybody. We mentioned this Saturday night, Omega is going to defend the title, the AEW title against Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Well, it's Kenny Omega's job and responsibility to put the quote unquote shine on Jungle Jack and to do things that accentuate what Jungle Jack does well, and adapt to that, enhance this challenger. And that's what I was so proud of watching Dory. Just was, he always made everybody better. So I was bullshitting about Bruce there. I don't have no argument about Dory being a great NWA champion. I thought that he certainly was, but he's, I had a match one time. My first NWA title match that I refereed was between Harley Race and Junior. And I went back and Cowboy said, I got a good booking for you tonight. You're going to do the main event, which is the first main event I'd ever done. So I didn't start off slow. I didn't work. I kind of worked into it, but it got me heat on me with the other referees because the Kid, as I was called, goddamn, it's been a long time since I've been called the Kid. That I was I was the chosen one for that match. And then until they found out it was going to be an hour Broadway, you know, I didn't know walking to the ring what a Broadway meant.
Right.
When I was walking to the ring to do this NWA title match between two of the greatest of all time, and I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. Harley Race and Dory Jr. were two of the very, very best of all time. And they still rank that in my world. So I asked the old referee that trained me, Leo Voss. I said, Leo, kind of, you know, the old deal. Hey, Leo, what the fuck is a Broadway? And I'm thinking, well, it's got something to do with New York.
Right.
Broadway. Where's Broadway? It's in New York. So it's got something, I don't know what it is though. And he puts his hand over his mouth so nobody can hear us. It's a draw. So now I'm processing all this information. So it's a 60-minute draw. And I went into the little locker room in Tulsa. And there they sat. Old Harley was smoking those Marlboros. Junior's relaxed like he was in a coma. Just relaxed as hell. And so I said, is there anything I need to know before I go out there? This is big, really big for me. And Dory says, Harley says, show me how you count. So I got down on the concrete floor and I counted to 3. And he said, you count that way every time? I said, yes, sir. He said, good. Make sure you're consistent. I said, you can't make me break if you don't see what I've done. Because Harley was a heel. You can't make me break if you don't see what I've done. So you call what you see and see what you call. It's kind of like regular sports.
Yeah.
So I said, fine. And Dory had nothing to add to the conversation. He was just, again, and this is, I remember them saying to each other, well, what do you want to do then tonight? Well, I was still standing in that little room. And they said, I don't know. I don't care. St. Louis, Kansas City, Tampa. They had all these matches named by town that their style.
That's funny.
Yeah. And so it's like it's like the incessant screaming of Omaha by Peyton Manning. Omaha. They had their Omaha. They had their Kansas City. And hell, I didn't know what none of that meant. I'm still doing Tulsa. So anyway, that's kind of where we were with that. And that was a hell of a deal. I always thought, here's my fear. My fear was I'm going to get a near fall. I'm going to get down head to head where I can see the shoulders, and I'm going to count deliberately in a regular cadence, and I'm going to count the wrong guy out. And we're going to have a new NWA champion because of the referee screw up, which I felt like, Conrad, that I would be blackballed.
Right.
Fired on the spot. So I was a little, I was so tight you couldn't drive a nail up my ass with a sledgehammer. It was tight. So, man. So anyway, that was my first big foray into a main event, and I was in good hands. And the other uniqueness is that I think, I know Harley was, but I think Dory Jr. was also left-handed. So that makes you reverse things. You break on the right side. They're in a corner. You stand on the guy on the outside's right because you don't want to be hit in the face with a left-handed elbow to your teeth or your nose, your eye, or whatever it may be. So it was a fun experience. But Dory was they were amazing. Here's the other thing, Conrad, before I leave this story. I never heard them call one spot. I'm standing next to them.
Wow.
I'm in the ring with them. It wasn't where guys are dependent on memorizing a match. These son of bitches they didn't plan nothing but the finish. And that was on the last 2 or 3 minutes of going to their false finish series and getting to the time limit. Ding, ding, ding. So it was a great experience for me, and but all the credit goes to those two guys. So to Bruce's defense, I just like rusty his balls.
Of course.
I saw something you guys did the other day where he had his little JR face up. He was doing an impersonation of me doing porn.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw you bastards. Sassafras my ass. How's that for you?
You know what's funny? I know how you saw that, but let's move on. Terry heads to Japan and he becomes a big star and a draw. What was it about Terry that really connected with Japanese fans, do you think?
Unpredictability, non-traditional.
Yeah.
And still with that innate ability to make whomever he was working with look better than they actually were. Junior the same way. Junior had a huge respect in Japan, much like Terry, only it was just a different style. It was in a different wrapper. It was great taste, but a different wrapper. And they also had respect, and they also had the West Texas territory, Conrad. So if somebody in Japan wanted to book one of their young guys to come to the States for more seasoning, there you go. So it was a two-way thing here. It was a kind of a booking partnership. But what opened the eyes of all the booking partnership that existed there was the fact both guys are really, really good.
Unfortunately, Terry's father would pass away, and he's going to help take over the Amarillo territory. And he's written in his book about how tough those times were for him. Have you ever heard any stories about that time in Texas and what the Amarillo territory was like once Senior passed away?
Well, I think it was like a lot of territories, Conrad. You had one alpha male that ran everything and handled the payroll, the routing, and generally the routing was not a big pain in the ass because they ran the same towns on the same night every week. So you had a route. So that wasn't too challenging. But booking was the big thing, and bookkeeping, things that wrestlers, sometimes you get burned out on booking.
Right.
You see the same faces and do the same things. And so that's why owners would hire bookers. And, but all I would say to that matter is that, when Senior died, it left a massive void, not only in the lives of his two sons, but also in the office. They were prepared to be wrestlers. They were not prepared to be specifically be administrators. So I think that was probably the rub there. Just got thrown into this deep water in a very unfortunate way.